Today on the Inside Scoop, Miami hosts Ohio State five-star commitment DJ Jacobs. We got intel on that visit. USC keeps on landing commitments. We're also going to talk Oregon as they are beefing up on the defensive line. And also top 10 quarterbacks making moves. We do the science on where the dominoes are falling. Make sure you guys are subscribed. If you're not subscribed and you're still watching the show, just go ahead and hit subscribe right now. We got a big show. As always, I'm your host, Josh Newberg. Let's get to it. Let's talk Miami recruiting. The Canes were at the epicenter of college football recruiting this weekend. And EJ Holland, you were there for Saturday's Big Splash. What was it called? Big Splash Weekend? What should we call it officially?
Spring Ball Splash. Come on, Josh.
Spring Ball Splash. So speaking of splash, Miami landed the number 3 ranked quarterback in America, Israel Abrams, and we will talk about him in a minute. But the first player we got to talk about is committed to Ohio State. Edge DJ Jacobs was back on campus. He's from Georgia, committed to Ohio State about 8 weeks ago now. And Miami hasn't given up in this recruitment. Jacobs on campus once again, looked like he had a great time. What are you hearing coming out of this visit?
Yeah, no, I think that Miami is definitely a factor here. The Hurricanes are pushing hard for a flip. And if you remember, DJ was considered a Miami lean earlier in the cycle before Ohio State came in the 11th hour and got a commitment from him. But this one is far from over. He spent multiple days on campus. He was at practice on Thursday. He was at the pool party on Saturday, also took in practice that day. And I think I've seen, some Ohio State folks say, well, it's about his brother because his younger brother is a Rivals 300 defensive lineman in the 2028 recruiting class. But even though Miami is recruiting Dawson, I think a lot of this obviously had to do with DJ. You don't go for 3 days during Miami's biggest recruiting event if you're not interested, And I had a chance to obviously be on campus. I saw DJ hanging out with some of the fellow recruits at the pool party, a lot of the staff members. I mean, it gave Miami a real chance to get around him, get around his family. And like I said, I think Miami is a true factor here. Will they flip DJ Jacobs? I'm not sure. He respectfully declined to speak to the media at the event. But I do think that Miami can get this one done. They are capable of winning this recruitment. Miami has all the resources in the world in terms of NIL, but they also have a lot to sell when it comes to edge development. Ruben Bain, Akeem Messidor was there recruiting him. You have Jason Taylor, a Hall of Famer, coaching the position. And, Miami's back on top as well, just winning football games, has an elite education, which is also important to DJ. So Miami just checks a lot of boxes for him.
All right. Guys, go to Kane Sport. EJ did a phenomenal job of covering this weekend's event. We can only talk about so many names, but Kane Sport has all the info. I want to talk next about another out-of-state five-star. We're talking Joshua Dobson, a top 10 player overall, the number 2 ranked corner in America. He's from North Carolina. How did he enjoy his trip to Miami?
Yeah, going into this visit, it seemed like more of an SEC battle with LSU having led the way in that recruitment for quite some time at this point. Texas A&M has been increasingly involved. South Carolina has become a major player in that recruitment as well. But I think Miami, swung hard and really moved the needle this weekend. I had a chance to talk to Josh while he was still on campus after the pool party. Really enjoyed his time there. Miami doesn't officially have a cornerbacks coach yet, but Terry Jefferson has been handling duties there, made a good impression. He had personal time with Mario Cristobal. He hung out with several of Miami's commits like Jalen Jones and Sherrod Gordine and Amari Stevens. I think he felt at home at Miami. And Josh was honest with me afterwards. I still think Miami has a little bit of work to do here, but he told me, look, Miami's really rising in my recruitment. I think coming out of this visit, I will set a summer official visit. That's all you can ask. If you're Miami here, I think you just kind of keep churning, keep chipping away. hire your cornerbacks coach, get them on campus for that summer OV, and see what can happen. Look, Miami is willing to invest at the cornerback position this cycle. They are also in the mix for number 1 cornerback, John Meredith, Josh Dobson, number 2 cornerback in America. Miami is going all in at the corner position. So, like I said, I think you just keep working this one, hire your corners coach, see what happens during official visit season. But Miami is definitely on the rise in that recruitment.
All right, the next big name I want to talk about that was on campus is running back Myson Johnson-Cook. He might not be a 5-star in the rankings, but his recruitment and the way teams are pursuing him is as if he's one of the most highly ranked players in America. So this weekend, Myson Johnson-Cook took a look at the Canes. How do you feel about him and where things stand after this visit?
Yeah, Myson Johnson-Cook, he looks like a 5-star.
Yeah.
He's physically impressive. He's a bigger back, but he also has sub 10.5 100-meter speed, which is absolutely an insane combination. But I think things are really trending well with Myson Johnson-Cook. I spoke to our national analyst, Steve Wiltfong, last night, and I think we're both very close to making predictions in that recruitment in favor of the Hurricanes. Now, Johnson-Cook does have official visits on his mind. Miami will certainly get one, but he didn't rule out making a decision at any time. He basically said, if a school feels right, then he'll side with that school. And I think Miami is starting to feel right for him. He's been on campus twice over the last 2 months. He attended the big 305 day in March. He attended this spring ball splash. So he got a chance to not just be on campus for a regular visit. He attended two biggest recruiting events of the offseason so far. And so I think he got an in-depth look at the program, got extended time with new running backs coach Fabian Upshaw, extended time with Mario Cristobal, also just in a more relaxed setting. The 305-day event was at Cristobal's house. Cristobal was out there at the pool, so I think all of that really played in Miami's favor. He's also developed a relationship with Mark Fletcher, Miami's starting running back, and Fletcher has done a great job of kind of peer recruiting him or player recruiting him. And I think Fletcher's made a big impact on him as well. So Miami in a great, great spot for Myson Johnson-Cook coming out of this visit weekend.
All right. Now let's move on to Israel. Nope. We're going to talk about one more 5-star. Now, Mark Matthews, big old offensive tackle. He was not there at Big Splash, but he did make it in on Thursday. And then there was a major development. Mark Matthews chopped his list down. What is it, a Final Four?
Final Four.
And did the Canes make it?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, Miami's been the front runner in this recruitment for a while. I think a lot of Canes fans are hoping that Matthews shuts it down sooner rather than later. I think Mark has always said he's wanted to make a decision in the summer, but was very fluid about it. So, I still think it's okay to have hope that Mark will make a decision maybe before we get into that OV season, which is slated to get started the last weekend of May. If it does go into OVs, it goes into OVs. It is what it is. I still think Miami's in a really good spot here. Even though he wasn't at the Spring Ball Splash event, he was on campus on Thursday, rocking Miami gear, had a chance to check out practice. So he didn't make it to the event. It was his birthday on Saturday, so he had a lot of other festivities going on, and that's why, I think he released the list on that day. I think of the other schools that made the cut, the one school that would be somewhat concerning to me is Texas A&M. I think they are the biggest threat to Miami in that recruitment. It'll be interesting to see, like I said, if we get to OV season, if he makes that OV to A&M. But again, I like where Miami stands in that recruitment. I think the Hurricanes can get it done. Not only do they have the resources in terms of NIL, like we talked about with DJ Jacobs, but they also have a lot to sell along the offensive line too, similar to the edge position. Elite development, one of the best coaches in the country in Alex Mirabal, a head coach who has offensive line background in Mario Cristobal. I mean, Miami just has it all when it comes to Mark Matthews, and he's a local kid. They're going to do everything they can to keep him home.
All right, now let's get to the biggest news, probably the biggest news of the weekend, even though it happened on Friday. Number 3 ranked quarterback Israel Abrams out of Lombard, Illinois, Miami going to Illinois to find a 6'4.5", 190-pound quarterback. Israel Abrams is committed to the Canes. Why do you think he's the best fit? Now, you said this before he committed. You felt like Israel Abrams was the best fit for Miami. Why?
He just seems like a Miami kid, man. He has that swagger. He's super competitive. It's funny. I saw him out at OT7, and I didn't really know what to expect. He's not a kid that does a ton of interviews or a ton of media stuff. It was actually cool to see him make his commitment live on ESPN because he's kind of has shied away from being that limelight type of quarterback. But seeing him at OT7, like I said, I didn't really know what to expect when talking to him since he doesn't do a ton of interviews. But right off the bat, man, just the confidence, the swagger, the competitiveness. A lot of times you see guys at events like 7-on-7s or camps, and they're not really giving it full speed, full effort. He was there to win. He's a gamer. He's a guy who's constantly competing, getting his teammates fired up, elevating those around him. And that's also reflected on the high school side as well. He's undefeated as a high school quarterback, back-to-back state champion, more than 4,000 yards passing, dual threat guy who can make plays with his legs, pass first though, loves to create in and around the pocket, makes high-level throws on the move, can also set his feet and make high-level throws just as a pure passer. So I think there's just a lot to like about Israel Abrams. He's a taller quarterback, about 6'3", 6'4", can add some really good weight to his frame as well. So there's still upside with him. Miami's done a fantastic job of getting elite quarterbacks out of the transfer portal, but Israel Abrams is a guy they can develop for a year, and he can be the future of the quarterback position at Miami. So for me, he just checked all the boxes from a talent standpoint. And then also, when you look at quarterbacks, I think it's so important to really have that winning mindset, to have that demeanor, to have that confidence. And Israel Abrams definitely has that, and he'll bring that swagger to Miami. And I think he can help recruit some other highly touted skill players to Miami as well. Myson Johnson-Cook is a fellow Illinois native, even though he's further away from Chicagoland down in East St. Louis. But he mentioned Israel Abrams. He said, "Man, that caught my attention. Just having another Illinois guy, especially of that stature, committing to Miami, really moved the needle for me. I know that he can be a playmaker at quarterback. I can be a playmaker at running back. So Israel's commitment already making waves, and just like I said, the fact that it was on ESPN on the Pat McAfee show, I think all of that." Played in Miami's favor. So big win. I mean, Israel went head to head with Will Menzel, the 5-star quarterback, at least on Rivals, beat him at OT7, looked like the better prospect in my opinion. I think this was obviously the biggest high school quarterback recruiting win for Miami under Mario Cristobal.
Big win, big weekend for Miami. Who's next? Cane fans, get in the comments section below and talk to us. Who do you think will be the next big commitment coming out of Big Splash Weekend? Let us know, comment section below. Let's talk some USC recruiting because the Trojans' momentum just keeps rolling. Now the number 5 recruiting class in America. Heading into the weekend, Javon Vital Jr. committed right here on this channel. If you guys are subscribed, you got notified, and you know that he committed to the Trojans on Thursday. So that's not where we're going to start. We are going to cover that, but let's start in the secondary. Adam Gorney. USC might end up with the top DB class in America. Last week, huge additions. Honorfa Olave Johnson, Danny Lang, both committed, but they're not done. USC wants to add more at the safety position. So who else is on the board? Who are they making a priority at safety right now?
Yeah, general manager Chad Bowden told me that this is going to be a smaller class, but they're not going to end up with the number 1 class just because of numbers. But it seems like they just can't help themselves taking big commitments here. And so, so secondary was definitely a priority. They're going to lose a lot of guys. They started with J.O. Washington, got Danny Lang, beat Oregon for him, and then beat a lot of schools for Honorfa Olave Johnson. Now, I was told that they're potentially going to take another safety. So I don't think they're absolutely locked in on one. I think this could be a little bit of a budget issue. And so they're definitely looking at Gavin Williams. But Notre Dame, Washington, Michigan are very much involved there. Jaden Aparicio Bailey from the South is visited, loved it. I think he's an option. But Pole Mawala is the guy that I would watch most. He's reclassing from 28 to 27. He's doing that to commit. Now, he didn't put USC in his top group, which was a little suspicious, and I would call it a little fishy. I think that the Trojans are definitely involved here. Ole Miss is one of the schools to watch. He was at UCLA and Cal over the weekend, loved both visits. I think USC is going to still be involved there. So I don't think they need to take one. I don't think they feel the absolute pressure that they need a safety. After Honor kind of sucked up a lot of that money and just his ability all over the field. I think they're happy with 3. They would be thrilled with 4, but those would be the 3 names to watch.
All right. Now, it is a holiday weekend across America, so not as many visits, but of course, USC got some big names on campus. Adam, tell us about some interesting names visiting the Trojans this weekend.
Yeah, USC wrapped up spring practice this weekend, so they kind of went out with a bang and had some big time names there. Marcus Fakatu was there on Friday, and everywhere he visits is the new leader. Yeah. So we will see what's going on there. I talked to Honor Faalave Johnson about who he wants to target in this class, and he said Marcus Fakatu. And when I said that he said he doesn't want to play in LA, he doesn't want to play close to home, Honor said he's going to change his mind. So I think that he's made that his priority in this class. But Jace Cannon is another one, a tight end, a very interesting athletic tight end from Northern California who has USC and Stanford as his top 2 were there. Gavin Williams was back taking another visit as he gets to know new safeties coach Paul Gonzalez. I think that relationship is going to be very important. And then another one that I think is really important is Charles Davis, who I don't want to say he's the next Jacoby Lane, but he's very similar in how he plays and how he could be used as a big outside target receiver, very athletic kid, great hands. And then Reese Russell. So he walks out with Cannon Smith. There's a little bit of a Colorado offensive lineman pipeline to USC. Reese Russell could be next. So a lot of big-time names, a lot of 28s. They finished strong getting kids on campus. So the Trojans go into really the offseason here with a lot of momentum.
Yeah, it sounds like things are just building. And like you said at the top, USC, we all said, hey, they're not going to have a number 1 class because of numbers. But every time I look up, they're moving a spot up the rankings, now currently at number 5. So we'll see what happens there. But the latest commitment was running back Javon Vital Jr. Running back. I mean, if you watch his highlights, he's playing quarterback, he's playing wide receiver, he's playing everything really but running back for his team. But the Trojans get another elite athlete to commit. And I guess they'll figure it out when he steps on campus. Where do you think he plays?
Yeah, I honestly think that's the plan. They're going to bring him in and figure it out. And so he could play running back. He's, undersized. So can he be an every down back in the Big Ten? Probably not. But we're also talking about Lincoln Riley's offense here. So this is something where he can start in the backfield and then motion out. They can direct snap. They can get him in the slot. They can get him all over the field. And I think when you do, like you said, Josh, you watch that film, he plays everywhere. And so he's comfortable everywhere, and he has an idea of what to do pretty much at every position. So he's not positionless, but he is definitely someone that you can use all over the field. And Lincoln Riley obviously has a great offensive mind, will be able to use him all over the field. He's kind of a guy very much like Honor Faalave Johnson. You get the ball in his hands, you let him run. And so I think that's the important thing. Lincoln Riley will figure out where best that is.
Let's talk some Oregon recruiting. I love what Dan is building. That's not my quote. That is a quote from Edge Rashad Streets, who committed to Oregon on Friday, and it was a big one. Oregon slides into the top 10 at number 9 with only 6 total commitments, so there is room for more. We got Adam Gordy here. Let's talk about this defensive line. We add Rashad Streets to it, but not done yet. Zane Rowe, Cam Pritchard on the commit list. So let's talk about the guys that are there. You got Streets, Rowe, and Pritchett. What stands out about the players that they have already on board?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a diversity there in what they can do. The length, Zane Rowe is already 260 pounds. That means in college he'll be 280. The same with Cam Pritchett. So there's some inside-outside kind of things there. And Oregon really did a smart thing here, and they knew that they were going to lose a lot on their defensive line after this year to the NFL. Mateo's probably a first-round pick when all is said and done. Amari Washington, a lot of first-round projections there. Even Elijah Rushing on a lot of early 2027 mock drafts is a guy that really didn't, explode last season, but probably could have a big year this year. They're losing a lot, so they have to get a lot, and that's what the coaches have told all these guys. And it's not just a recruiting pitch. If you look at the guys that are leaving, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to come in. Marcus Fakatow told me this week that, Dan Lanning told him that they're losing their entire room. So that is a massive recruiting pitch to come in, get early playing time, and then see that development. So from Rashad Streets going across the country to get him, going to Texas for Zane Rowe, going to Alabama for Cam Pritchett, and then kind of focusing on Fakatow, there's a lot of diversity there, a lot of inside outside guys that can move all around. And then again, the Ducks went national to get what the guys that they wanted.
Yeah. So when we look at the defensive line, probably room for one or two more. Now, the Ducks did make a run at number one defensive lineman Jalen Brewster, but like you mentioned, next up is number two on the defensive line rankings, Marcus Fakatow. Now, where do the Ducks stand with him?
Yeah, so they're number one right now, but so was Georgia after their visit. So was Ohio State after their visit. He was just at USC on Friday and then Miami on Saturday. So I don't think he's trying to chase headlines here and naming number ones. I think he's an impressionable kid that goes on, some of the best visits humanly possible for a college football prospect and falls in love with those places. But Dan has a very, unique way of getting the kids that he really wants, whether through recruiting, whether through all of the things that Oregon offers, whether through NIL budgets, all of the things that come together in recruiting now. And he does a phenomenal job closing late. So if Fakatow, takes other visits, sees other schools, revisits other schools, if Oregon can get him back on campus, he's a kid that has told his parents, originally from Alaska, now playing in Southern California, that he doesn't want to play in the cold and doesn't want to play in the West. But when he went to Oregon, he absolutely fell in love with it, and the job Dan Lanning did. So we will sort of revisit this after all of his trips and see who lands at number one. But Oregon is absolutely in the picture now.
Yeah, and he is taking trips everywhere right now. But I want to ask you, who else is a priority on that defensive front?
Yeah, so you're going to have to figure out, they already have three, so how many can they go? And so you go, they might be done after Fakatow. I would, if they kind of circle back on Jalen Brewster, even though that might be a little bit cause from an NIL perspective, but they really were after him. And then, they've offered a whole bunch of guys on the defensive line. So I don't know if they have to kind of revisit the top of the group after they learn what they're going to do on Fakatow. But Tavita Nonu is a kid from the Pacific Northwest to watch. I wouldn't be shocked if they circle back on a kid like Miles Smith. Kasai Curry is another guy. So I think they have a little bit of a West field here. Kasai Curry is a kid that's kind of visiting all around and doing the Marcus Fakatow thing where he loves every visit. He was just at Ohio State this weekend. They are up there. Texas is up there. But he went up to Oregon and is revisiting in a couple weeks. So I think Kasai Curry is very much in the picture as well, especially, he's looking at NFL development as one of his biggest things. And he's going to be able to be pitched that, numerous guys on that defensive line could be first rounders.
All right. Well, I can't let you go out of an Oregon segment without talking quarterback recruiting. We saw a major development last week. Jake Nallrot was offered, then he visited. Of course, Will Menzel has been trending in Oregon's direction, so we thought for much of the offseason. It seems right now that Oregon's going to end up with one of the two of these names. What's your thoughts real quick on who Oregon ends up landing at quarterback?
Yeah, some good news for Oregon, sort of tangentially here is that Miami just got a quarterback commit in Izzy Abrams. So knock them off the list for Will Menzel, and you're essentially down to three: Oregon, Auburn, and Penn State. And so Auburn and Penn State, obviously great programs and have developed quarterbacks over the years, but both new coaching staffs. both far away from home. So maybe there is SEC Big Ten draw in those programs, but I think that even, benefits Oregon even more. The Ducks have been involved with Menzel from the beginning. They were involved with him before he shot up the rankings after the Navy All-American Bowl. I think that really, really pays off. Narot definitely involved, visited right after he got his offer. I think that is always telling. But I think Iowa definitely leads there. Northwestern, Kansas State, and then Kentucky is a school that we could talk about for both of them is a little bit of a dark horse, just because they're going after quarterbacks. Will Stein and Joe Sloan definitely want a quarterback in this class. Menzel is involved. Narod is definitely involved, among others. But I think Izzy Abrams' commitment to Miami knocks Miami off the list for Menzel, which only favors Oregon as the leader there.
There was a major development at the quarterback position over the weekend. One of the top 3 quarterbacks in America, Israel Abrams, made his announcement. He is committed to Miami, made that commitment on Friday heading into the weekend, which is going to impact quarterback domino. So we're going to talk about it with national analyst Adam Gorney. Now, Adam, I am looking at the Rivals rankings here. So we're going to start at the top. Well, let's start at the top. We got 2 uncommitteds. We got Will Menzel at number 1 and Jake Nallrot at number 2. And I kind of feel, in a sense, like these guys are kind of tied together. Their recruitments overlap a lot. Will Menzel, you got Oregon for Jake Nallrot, you got Auburn in there. What do you think right now when it comes to Menzel and Nallrot? What's going to be the deciding factor?
Yeah, there didn't seem to be, and they're not like traditional tie-ins there, but they have kind of interwoven each other
Right.
in terms of a lot of the schools that they're looking at, and that starts with Oregon. I think Menzel is definitely the top target there if they can get him committed. Now, the tricky part with Menzel is he doesn't talk a whole lot about his schools, and I do wonder with the schools that are recruiting him if he's painted a really clear picture of exactly what he's looking to do here. So, like you said, Izzy Abrams is committed to Miami now. So let's eliminate them from his top 4. He now essentially has a top 3 with sort of a 3B of Kentucky now inching in there because they're very, very involved and want to make a big splash at quarterback. But I think Oregon is the team to beat, maybe by far. Penn State is definitely going to be involved, playing for Matt Campbell. Auburn is going to be involved, playing for Alex Golish. 2 new coaches there. He knows what he's going to get at Oregon. I think Oregon is just the team to beat for Menzel. Now, Narot, Oregon offered, and he visited within days, which is always a good sign that there's a lot of heavy interest there. But from talking to people, the sense really is that he stays Midwest. I think he loves Tim Lester at Iowa. I think Kansas State is involved. Northwestern is involved, and then again Kentucky. So Kentucky's trying to get involved with both of these guys, stay involved, and maybe once one comes off the board, really hammer the other one to try to make a big splash at quarterback there.
Yeah, with Nallrot, I feel like his recruitment now. Nallrot is from Illinois. Will Menzel is from Chandler, Arizona, so they're not located anywhere near each other, even though, like you said, their recruitments kind of do overlap. Now, I feel like Nallrot a little bit is more like his recruitment might come down to location a little bit more. You got Iowa, you got Northwestern, you got the teams in the Midwest. Yes, he did visit Florida State. Yes, he did visit Oregon. I just feel like Kentucky as well. I feel like Jake Nallrot is going to end up somewhere in the Midwest, while Will Menzel is a bit more of a wild card in terms of location.
Yeah, if I was trusting my gut, I would definitely agree with you there. And so location means sometimes very little for quarterbacks and sometimes a lot. Wherever Menzel goes is going to be a plane flight. It's going to be far. So, Oregon is probably the closest. I don't know exactly how much of a difference that really matters, but the sense is with Nallrot, like his entire recruitment, other than a dip down to Florida State, which he's gonna fall in love with. He liked Mike Norvell a lot, and over to Oregon. It just feels like Iowa, Kansas State, Northwestern, Kentucky. That area is gonna be much more. Now saying that, Izzy Abrams is from Illinois too, and he's going to South Florida. So we will see how this all plays out. But I do get the sense that he's leaning more to those traditional Big Ten areas.
Yeah, it just seems that way. All right, so if we're looking at the Rivals quarterback rankings. Number 1 and 2 are still open. Number 3, Izzy Abrams. He just committed to Miami. That's a big domino. It's going to get things going. The next 3 quarterbacks in the top 10 are also committed. You got Keegan Croucher made an early commitment to Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, but he still remains committed to Ole Miss. Then you got Kavian Bryant committed to Texas Tech. Trey Taylor committed to Nebraska. That takes us to number 6. Now, of those guys, I think obviously Israel Abrams locked in. He just made his commitment. Keegan Croucher, we're going to talk about. Kavian Bryant, Texas Tech, locked in, right? He's not taking any visits. You don't hear any rumors with him. Same with Trey Taylor. He's shown up in Lincoln a couple times. So let's circle back to Keegan Croucher, the number 4 ranked quarterback in this class. Is he solid to Ole Miss under Pete Golding? What's the latest? Where do you feel he stands?
Yeah, so I think that this is the interesting one, is that Indiana is going to play a factor here, and I think it's going to be a big factor. Again, I think Kentucky is going to be involved. I think those schools are definitely ones to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if others get involved, because Croucher is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So as schools strike out on other guys, but I think those 2 should definitely be watched. Now, here's what I have to say about this. When you commit to someone like Lane Kiffin, you want to play for Lane Kiffin. You want to play for Charlie Weiss. You want to play in that offense. Now, Pete Golding takes over the job, very talented coach, but a defensive-minded coach. You don't know what you're getting. So that will be interesting to watch, because, the entire idea of going to Ole Miss for Croucher was to play for Lane. And so that's no longer a reality. So I think other schools, including the national champions, that seem to be able to do no wrong, that will have the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, I think that's very compelling. So definitely something to watch.
All right, so let's move on to the next uncommitted name. That's Elijah Haven at number 7. We felt for a while he's trending to Alabama for a while, like 3.5 months. Do you still feel good about where the Tide sit with Elijah Haven, who could be making a decision by the end of the month? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it seems like every month we say that he's going to make a decision by the end of the month and then
Right.
doesn't. And I don't know if this is cold feet or just really doing your homework here. And so I think the most important thing to do with Haven, as you kind of read the tea leaves here, is play the elimination game. So Florida has another top target. We're going to talk about him shortly. Georgia really isn't recruiting him all that much as far as we know. LSU doesn't seem to be in this game. He visited Auburn, but that doesn't seem to really make sense right now. So you circle back to Alabama again and again and again. And the feeling is that he could make a decision by the end of April. We've said that, I think, since December. And I think everybody's just waiting. But Alabama does not seem to be really heavily pursuing other quarterbacks yet, which is another way to read this, is that they're just waiting on Haven. It seems like all the ducks are coming into a row. And I would think in a few weeks, this will finally be done. Something that has been waited for months.
Yeah, pretty straightforward so far. That recruitment's been pretty straightforward. Now, at number 8, we have another uncommitted. He is out of Goodyear, Arizona, Blake Roscoff. We haven't talked too much about him on this channel, but the RPM has him at 43% to UNC across the country. Do you agree with that right now?
Yeah, I think that might be a little bit of a stretch. We'll see how this plays out. Now, his receiver, Zarek Sidney, is already committed to Washington. I think Washington is absolutely a school to watch for Roscoff. He just visited as well. He's a big quarterback, very interesting kind of guy, 6'5", 225, kind of that prototypical 1990s, 2000s quarterback, but that can sling it. That's going to be more of a pocket guy, but can still move. So it will be interesting. He has also visited North Carolina. He's been to the Southern California, to UCLA. He's been to Stanford. He's been to Oregon. He's done his rounds. Doesn't really talk about leaders as much. Kind of tries to keep it quiet a little bit. So I think Washington 1,000,000% is a team to watch here, especially with his receiver committed. There's a whole bunch of guys at Desert Edge now. So all of them, might want to play together. A lot of them are really close. But of course, Bill Belichick is going to be intriguing to play at North Carolina. I think that's definitely one to watch. He has very good relationships on the offensive staff in Chapel Hill. But I think North Carolina is going to be in it. But I definitely think Washington is the school to watch.
All right, that takes us to number 9, Peter Bork. One-time Michigan commitment, decommitted shortly after Coach Whittingham was in place. Now Peter Bork took a visit to Georgia. There was some buzz around them, but then he took a trip to Penn State. Penn State trending at 70% on the recruiting prediction machine. Seems like that's a good fit for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Michigan makes a lot of sense. I'm sorry, I think Penn State makes a lot of sense. The issue with Michigan now is that the interesting part is that Kyle Whittingham and his offensive staff have sort of morphed into loving these dual threat quarterbacks that run around, make plays, go crazy, do all those kinds of things. The leading rusher at Utah last year, the quarterback was very involved in that conversation, and that's just not Bork's game. So I don't think Michigan makes a whole lot of sense there. Penn State definitely makes a lot of sense. Look at the Iowa State quarterbacks under Matt Campbell. I think that's going to make a lot of sense. Georgia gets interesting because it's Georgia, and they've had a lot of guys like him in the past, that guys that can move but are more comfortable sitting in the pocket. Miami has gotten in this game, but I think Penn State would be the school definitely to watch there.
All right. Now, when it comes to number 10, we have Camden Wapati, and he is currently committed to Illinois. But I've heard there's some teams coming after him. How solid is his commitment right now with Illinois?
Yeah, the thing with Lapati is that he absolutely loves Art Sitkowski at Illinois and Brett Bielema, and that they took a shot on him when he was a little bit of a no-name kind of guy before he really rose up the rankings. And the loyalty factor is very, very strong. So you have Illinois doing much better, winning a lot of games. You have a lot of great relationships there, but Notre Dame is calling. And so Notre Dame is very involved here. How do you turn down Notre Dame and stay in the Midwest? I think that's an interesting little bit of a factor. And there's going to be an opportunity there very shortly. So I think Michigan is involved here because of his connections to Kyle Whittingham and that offensive staff. He knows all those guys from Utah and BYU. But Notre Dame would definitely be the school here, just from a historic, traditional standpoint, plus how they're playing, plus his relationships with Marcus Freeman and that staff. I think if there's the biggest threat to flip him, which I think eventually happens, it would be Notre Dame.
All right. Well, that is the top 10, but we're going to give you a bonus because at number 11, it's a name that could be coming off the board. It could be coming off the board this week. We'll see. But Davin Davidson comes in at number 11. He's an intriguing prospect out of the state of Florida because he goes 6'6", 210 pounds. A lot of interest within the state. Miami was interested. Of course, they landed Israel Abrams. So now, does this clear the way for the Gators to land their guy?
Yeah, and as we were talking about Haven, and I mentioned another guy, this is the guy. Davin Davidson is definitely the top target. He'd be a splashy pick because he's making a lot of headlines this offseason, where he's just really became a national name very quickly after doing some events. And I think Florida is the team to beat and won't be beaten. So there's a top 8 there, but Florida's staff has prioritized him. He's an in-state kid, only a couple hours away from Gainesville. I think Davidson is comfortable with that situation. I think Florida absolutely loves that situation. I think it gets done.
All right. Well, there's our best guess on where the top quarterbacks are going to land, but you guys are the real recruiting experts. So get in the comment section, do the science. Where are these guys going to end up? Let us know in the comment section below.